This is what's pissing me off today. I'm Bob Pritchard. I was thinking this morning about one of the people I used to interview when I was hosting one of the talk shows at a downtown radio station several decades ago. And he explained to me, and he was an ex-DEA agent, and he explained to me that the way gun violence goes is initially when people start shooting each other on the streets, it's headline news, and what else would you expect? Then he went on to say that as the violence increases, those shootings become, I guess, less newsworthy, and they move further back into the newspaper. So if you're living in a city where somebody being shot down or murdered on the streets is somewhere around page 10 in your local newspaper, well, you know that there's a lot of gun violence in your area. Well, we seem to have come to a new low or new level of gun violence in our society. Last weekend, I think there were 7 mass shootings in the United States, and of all those shootings, only 2 of them made the news. And that's something to think about because mass shootings certainly suggest that multiple people were killed and a lot of innocent people were injured as well. So as we move forward, you start to think to yourself, well, what could the next steps in gun violence be in our society? I had a little bit of awakening myself earlier this week. I happened to be down visiting my grandchildren, and they were living down around Wooten Way and Highway 7. Well, anyway, as we were coming back up, we saw a number of police cars sitting on the north side of Highway 7, and we thought, well, maybe there's a sale on at the local donut shop. Who knows what's going on? And we didn't think much of it, and then we noticed a lot of helicopters flying around, both the York Regional Police chopper and news choppers. And then we found out that what had happened is there had been a shootout between a couple of vehicles about 2 blocks from my son's house. And I'm thinking to myself, that's getting awfully close to home because the neighborhood that we were in is considered to be a relatively safe neighborhood. Admittedly, the driving isn't too sharp, but other than that, it's a safe place to be. Well, now I've got to come to grips with the thought that there are shootouts happening in that subdivision. And I had to ask myself, where is all of this coming from? We've been led to believe that the only people who have guns out there are the bad guys. And obviously, if the bad guys can afford to buy guns, so can the good guys. So I'm not suggesting that all the good guys have guns, but I would think that there's a lot more firearms out there than, well, the people let on about, especially the police. I would think if you happen to have moved to Canada from a country where violence is just a part of the normal everyday way of life, and there's a lot of countries like that, I would think you'd just be more comfortable having some sort of a firearm in your house. Not that you're advertising it to anybody or you're pulling it out and shooting up the neighborhood, but if somebody's going to break into your house, well, you're going to be ready for it. And there have been several occurrences where people have been charged for that. Houses broken into and they defend themselves and end up being charged with assault. I don't know what we're going to do about gun violence, but I'm pretty sure the status quo isn't working. The police are obviously trying to tell us that it's the court's fault that people who have guns are out on bail and nothing else. I honestly believe that at the end of the discussion, a lot of people are armed, and probably it's best just to try and avoid the whole discussion. I'm part of that generation that thought guns were a horrible thing. We never had one in the house, never had one, never want to have one, think it's a bad thing to have around. However, I wouldn't want to take that to the streets because I would suspect that there's a lot of people cruising around who are heavily armed. If the police can just stop people at spot checks and find guns all over the place, it's got to be a lot more popular than the police are telling us about, and that's what's pissing me off today. I'm Bob Pritchard.